G'day, I'm Joel Rasmussen from Fight News Australia, and today I'm joined by the one, Jacinta Austin. Jacinta, thank you so much for joining me today.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, we were just chatting about it a little bit before we started, but you've just got off a 15-hour flight to Abu Dhabi, so I think you're the furthest person I've ever interviewed. You're on not quite the other side of the planet, but so the flight was all well, everyone's well.
Yeah, the flight was pretty good. It actually went surprisingly fast. And then the service, like as soon as we got out of the airport, like there was someone here to grab us, take us straight to the hotel, take us straight to breakfast. So I'm fed. I'm all good.
Excellent, that's good. What are
Yeah.
your initial impressions of Abu Dhabi?
Well, I haven't seen anything yet. We literally went from the airport to the hotel. I've got a little view out so I can see a little bit. The sun's just coming up now. But the hotel's beautiful and yeah, obviously the service has been awesome. But we're gonna go have a little explore a bit later, go check out Yas Beach and yeah, have a look
Excellent.
around.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
I hope you have a great time doing that. You're not, I feel like in the MMA career, it's a very interesting point because it's like a lot of fight experience, but still kind of in the early on in the MMA aspect. I know you're heading into your fifth professional fight, but I wanted to know how has the jump from Muay Thai and kickboxing to MMA been?
You know what? It's been as far as like the skill side of it, it's been very difficult. Having to go from just covering one skill set to, five, six skill sets, that's been very difficult, as in the amount of time it takes, the workload on your body. Um, but as far as like the MMA community and fighting being a lot more professional and you get a lot more credit when you do win, and it feels like there is more opportunity for career development. I love that. Like that's what I wanted for years is to pursue a career out of this, and I never really got that feeling, that professionalism or prospects of a career from Muay Thai. So I'm loving like every time I win, I feel my career stepping up a little bit, and that's what I wanted.
Mentioning that, do you think because there's so many more of those tools and skills you have to learn, that's maybe why a win in martial arts seems to maybe go a bit further?
I think so, yeah. I think so. And there's just more there's more money in MMA. There's just more opportunity, really. I mean, there's not as many people to fight in Australia, that's for sure. There's a very small handful of girls, especially in my weight division, to fight, which is a big part of why we're over here now. But yeah, I like a lot that the wins they mean something. Um, Especially like in Muay Thai where I felt like I won. I won all the time. I won 14 in a row, and yet I didn't really get anywhere. So it's nice to see the hard work paying off in MMA a bit more.
You mentioned, there is a somewhat of a smaller bubble within the Australian scene, but you've traveled both for mixed martial arts and for Muay Thai. What is it like traveling and fighting? Does it change the routine a lot compared to when you're back at home?
This is probably the biggest trip I've done as far as traveling to fight. I did fight as an amateur in Hungary in Hungary. But I was an amateur then, so there was no like weight cuts involved. It was more of a tournament style. But so far so good. Like yeah, so far it hasn't been really many issues. You're a bit tired on the plane and stuff and a bit irritable, but that's just fight week for you.
Of course. Um,
Yeah.
how would the camps differ from a Muay Thai camp and an MMA camp?
Most significant is probably the workload. So Muay Thai, our my routine was pretty much you do your morning run or conditioning, and then you do your evening sparring and pads and bag work, and you wrap it all up in a couple of hours, really. MMA, you've not only got like your conditioning and recovery, but then you've got each individual skill set. So your wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai. But then we do a lot of fight study as well. There's a lot to be learnt from sitting and watching fights, and sitting and watching jiu-jitsu breakdowns or watching wrestling DVDs, or there's a lot more study involved in mixed martial arts, I feel.
You've mentioned in some other other interviews talking about the study aspect that some of you and your coaches like to study and kind of come up with a game plan per opponent. When you're at sort of those earlier levels where you're going up against people who are either making their debut or they've had one or two fights, how difficult is that when there's not a lot of footage on a person?
I don't get too involved in the study of a person. When I say the study that I do, I mean just more of just technical study, just watching breakdowns and seminars and things like that. But as far as studying opponents, yeah, I don't do too much of that. It's more my coach that does it. But there are little tells you can see from each fight, little traits that can be exploited. Again, like every time you get, I notice every time I get in the cage with that person that we have studied, they're better than what we thought they were going to be anyway. Every time. Everyone evolves between every fight, every time. And it's very easy to watch someone's fight and say that you'll handle them easily. But once you're in the cage, like it's often not so easy. So I try not to get too wrapped up in old footage because I know that they're better the next time they get in the cage anyway.
You mentioned in an interview I grabbed this quote from you that I found very interesting. You mentioned when you first started to learn how to kickbox, you had, quoting you here, no natural ability at kickboxing. And I was wondering, you seem so confident now, both in the general kickboxing world and then in the martial arts world. I was wondering, how long did it take for you to start going, I can really put this together and I could really have a go at this?
I think a lot of my earlier fights with kickboxing, I won because I was super aggressive, super fit. I was always fitter than my opponent, and just I put like a lot of pace on, and that's usually what got the job done for me. When I got to the end of amateur and sort of beginning of pro, I realized that that's not the answer for people that are more technical and people that are there to fight you. They're not just going to back down so easily. So I think when I moved camps and moved gyms to the gym that I'm at now with the coach I'm at now, that's when I actually started to become somewhat of a technical fighter and use other methods rather than just like cardio, fitness, strength, that sort of stuff.
We've talked a lot about obviously the kickboxing history, but you're not just focusing on that aspect. When someone isn't accomplished in one area, you can kind of understand if they would just stick with that. But you've won a gold at the Central Coast BJJ Open. I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on picking up the grappling?
So when I first started it was like a chore for me. It was something that I had to do if I wanted to compete in MMA. You just have to do it. And I found it very, very daunting, especially when you're first starting. All you're doing is getting smothered and you're just on bottom all the time. It's very frustrating. After I got about 6 months in, I started to develop I wouldn't call myself like a natural at it, but I definitely picked it up quicker than I picked up the striking. Once I got my head around the basic ideas, I feel like I just excelled in it quite quickly. And I actually enjoy it somewhat more than striking now. I've competed in multiple grappling tournaments now, and yeah, I almost like it more than striking.
Your last time out in the cage, you got your first pro MMA finish coming from a rear naked choke. As you just said there, you're really liking the grappling. Do you think that sends like a big statement to say like, I'm an accomplished kickboxer, but I also love to grapple?
Yeah, definitely. I think the worst thing you can do is come from a striking background and assume that you're only ever going to strike and defend takedowns. Kind of makes you a bit vulnerable in the grappling department. And I never want to be known as like that one trick pony. I want to be good everywhere. So I don't think anyone can look at me and decide whether they want to strike or grapple. Like they're going to have a hard time with both is the goal.
When going out into your fights, is it always looking for a KO? Is it how do you approach going into a fight?
Now, once I've actually finished my last opponent, I feel a lot more confident in going out and looking for that. Whereas before, because I came from Waco Kickboxing, which is like almost like a point fighting organization. So my style was very focused around scoring points, moving, and yeah, just outpointing your opponent for the duration of the fight. But now I feel like I've really learned and I have more confidence in my ability to finish. So I go out there like looking to finish now, not just to win on points.
Uh, Jumping back a little bit to 2021, I saw you competed in both an MMA match and then a boxing match. When you're jumping from style to style, does a part of your brain get the rules mixed up? Like when you go out and box, does part of you go, I really want to kick this girl in the leg right now?
No, like I see it. I do see the opportunity to. My brain will automatically register that she's standing too heavy on her front leg. My brain will register that, but I don't ever go to throw it or anything. I register it, but I'm pretty disciplined with the different rule sets and um yeah, so no nasties yet, no false moves yet.
He's hoping there isn't any.
Yeah.
Be pretty funny though.
Well, I don't know if you saw, I had a nice little sprawl in my boxing fight. She ducked her head, but she ducked it too low. So my brain automatically went, she's going in for the takedown, and I sprawled right on top of her. So that's the closest I've come.
Nothing wrong with having those reflexes in there.
No,
Not
head
at
was too
all.
low.
It's on her. It's on her.
Exactly.
Um, so you've fought in kickboxing, heaps of kickboxing fights, including 10 titles, both regional and national level. But going back to that first professional MMA fight, because I know your first amateur was kind of sprung on you.
Yeah.
When you're backstage, you know, you're going to make the walk for your first professional MMA fight. What are the feelings like, even though it's a new sport, but you've already competed in combat so much?
Yeah. First one, I was absolutely terrified because it was my first MMA fight, really, my first MMA prep. It was against a jiu-jitsu brown belt and the national wrestling champion. And I had sparred her a couple months previously, and she took me down over and over again. So I was pretty terrified, but at the same time, I knew that I had done everything that I can to prepare. If it's meant for me, I'll win. If it's not meant for me, I won't win. And I had a lot of trust in the plan that my team had set out for me, such as the way we were going to move to shut down her ability to wrestle me. So yeah, I was terrified, but I was kind of at peace that the preparation was so good that yeah, I just had to have a bit of faith in my team, and yeah, it came good.
Absolutely running riding a 4-fight win streak, undefeated in pro mixed martial arts. I heard you mention in other things before about, you know, it's like you're in this game, you understand that eventually you're going to get hit, you know, things are going to happen, you may lose a fight. Do you think if you lost that first fight out, would that have put a damper on it? Or by that point, were you like, this MMA thing is fun, let's go again?
On the first one, I was kind of like, I didn't really know um like that I wanted MMA. Like I didn't know yet. I thought I did, but I wasn't convinced yet. I wanted to see how I went. I couldn't picture myself because of my first experience in MMA, the amateur one that you were talking about. I couldn't really picture myself winning, and I was worried that I couldn't repeat what I had done in kickboxing with MMA. I'm not sure why. I just thought that maybe turning my back on striking, that I wasn't going to be able to be the same animal in MMA. So the first fight was kind of like a little test to see if I could still be as dominant as I was in just the stand up. And so I passed that test in my own mind to myself. And then I was like, right. Because at the time, she was number one ranked strawweight in the country. So once I beat her, I was like, I really think that I can do this.
Then was going into the second fight, was that just a huge boost in confidence then? How was the nerves in the second compared to the first?
The second, yeah, I wouldn't say I was as nervous because I at least knew what to expect. The second one was a jump in weight, though it was 5 kilos heavier. Just because I couldn't find any smaller opponents, so we went up a weight class. So that fight ended up having its own struggles. And it's probably like when I look back, it's the fight that I'm least impressed with. Um, she just presented a lot of complications that I didn't expect because of the physicality and the big gap in weight. Like I weighed in 2 kilos under, and then she weighed in 2 kilos over as well. So by the time we got there, it was just, it was a mess. But I learned a lot from that one as well. So, yeah.
How do you find the difference between fighting in a cage compared to a ring?
I think the biggest difference is like when you walk into it, like the ring feels like training. It feels like the gym. The cage feels like, all right, somebody's gonna die. Like it feels so violent. I'm not entirely sure why. But it feels a whole lot more like you're going to war, and it just feels a lot colder and more violent.
Does that play a mental game when you're in there?
It puts me on edge a little bit more, yeah. But it also makes me feel more violent. So win-win.
In this game, win-win.
You win-win. Yeah.
Uh, I saw in another interview recently, you've spoken about how you felt a UFC contract is maybe just one or two wins around the corner. And you've spoken about how back when you were more focusing on just kickboxing, you could have seen yourself going to one, you could have seen yourself going to K1. Uh, is going to those promotions, is that something that's constantly on the mind for you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now like it's on my mind. UFC is the only thing on my mind. Yeah, I think about it every day, every training session that I don't want to go to, I think about it. Um, and especially with this fight, I'm fighting someone who's already been looked at by the UFC, who's already been on road to UFC and won on road to UFC. So I'm pretty confident that if I perform well and dominantly this weekend, that it's going to be my turn next.
Excellent. Well, touching on your opponent a little bit here, I saw through some social media, I saw you posted on your story, just a little bit of back and forth between the teams, a little bit of some jabs here and there. We don't have to get into the exact details because it seemed it was all over the place. Um,
Yeah.
but when you're having those back and forth and it can get a little bit heated, does that affect your mentality going into the fight at all?
No, I'm a pretty calm and chill person. I think that if any of the threats that were being made were real, maybe it would play on me. But all this talk of, no one's gonna, Josephine saying no one's gonna stand and strike with her. I've had like 25 striking fights. Like, I don't know if you've watched any of her fights, but it's nothing. I mean, it's not bad, but it's nothing special. And I've been striking for years, so I'm not sure where all the silly talk is coming from. Um, I think like pre-fight banter is all well and good, but some of the stuff that she has said towards my coaches about being one of them was rapists, molesters. It just makes me think that maybe there's a few loose screws going on with her, and it's just gonna make me feel better when I win.
Will you face off against her at UAE Warriors? I believe it's 36.
Yes, UAE Warriors 36 this Saturday. It'll be
This
Australia Sunday morning.
Yes, Sunday 1 a.m. for Australia on the Fight Pass. I was just about to mention that. But
Yeah.
after, Saturday for you, Sunday back home, what's on after in Abu Dhabi? Is it straight back home or do you get to see the sights a little bit while you're over there?
Yeah, we have to come straight back, unfortunately. But it's only Tuesday now, and apart from little bits of media and press conferences, we kind of got um like 4 days to ourselves. So we get to see a bit. I mean, obviously, I won't get to enjoy too much of the food just yet, but yeah, we'll get to do a few days of sightseeing, and we got the day after the fight as well.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. I hope you enjoy your time in Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jacinta. I very much appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
Of
it.
of course, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. Good luck to you and your team.
Thank you. Have a good one.